You probably know about all the major captains at United over our almost 150-year history: Robson, Keane, Buchan, Carey, Charlton and so on. But you can argue that not a single one of them, nor the combination of the rest of the club's skippers over the generations, have been as important as Harry Stafford. Harry Stafford came before pretty much any captain that almost all of you can think of. He was a man who was all about his club, Newton Heath, before it metamorphosised into Manchester United. He lived and breathed it, and would even sacrifice a true friend who once saved his life to keep his club alive, and he never did it for the money. There was none. So find out more about our most important skipper, Harry Stafford. Harry Stafford was born on the 29th of November 1869 in Crewe. A defender, Harry began his career with his local club, Crewe Alexandra. Harry had great personal success with Crewe Alex, making over 150 appearances for the Railwaymen, scoring 3 goals and winning a pair of Cheshire Senior Cup winners' medals. Harry Stafford was an athletic individual, and so had great stamina and pace. He ran a variety of disciplines from the 100-yard dash to the half-mile. He was also a talented hurdler and represented Crewe Alexandra Athletic Club for several years until he joined 2nd Division Newton Heath as a professional in 1896 as a robust right-back. Harry debuted for the Heathens against Darwin in April 1896 and impressed so much that he secured the right-back berth almost immediately. Stafford's stature at the club rose as current club captain, Caesar Jenkins, moved on, prompting Newton Heath to make what would be a wise and ultimately monumental decision by making Harry Stafford club captain. To make ends meet, he also became the landlord of the Bridge Inn pub in Wrexham. At least for Harry, being the club captain really meant something more than personal respect or cachet. It meant looking after the club. Harry was rewarded with a benefit match for 5 years' service on the 6th of March 1901. Newton Heath played New Brighton at Bank Street in Harry Stafford's honour at night. The game was abandoned after 15 minutes because the wind kept blowing out the tar oil that was keeping the floodlights lit. Harry Stafford was often accompanied by his great St Bernard's dog called Major. The canine had saved him when he was at sea after Stafford had tried to rescue a sailor who had fallen overboard. Major had used all his strength and power to swim to shore with his master and the sailor in tow. Major became a club mascot of sorts, even sporting a collection box for Newton Heath around his neck to collect donations. By the time Harry joined Newton Heath, they had already been a 2nd Division side for a couple of seasons, and despite some high finishes which led to test matches or playoffs as we'd call them today, they couldn't get out of the 2nd tier. The Newton Heath board spent money the club didn't have on ground improvements. This was not enough to hold back the flagging attendances, despite the consistently solid finishes. However, during the 1900-01 season, the Heathens were struggling on the field too, losing more games than they won and debts mounting. There was a 4-day fundraiser bazaar for Newton Heath FC in February 1901 at St James's Hall in Manchester city centre. There was a dog show put on, and afterwards the Major went missing and eventually came in the possession of wealthy managing director of Manchester Breweries, John Henry Davis. Fortunately, after a week, Stafford was reunited with Major through a lost and found advert in the Manchester Evening News, and also that on Major's collar it read, "My name is Major, of Railway Street Crewe. I'm Harry Stafford's dog. Whose dog are you?" It was at this point that Harry refused a generous offer from Davis to buy the dog for his young daughter Elsie. She had become very attached to the Major while he was staying with them. Stafford was now a very popular landlord at one of Davis's pubs, the Bridge Inn in Ancoat Street, Manchester, which led the brewery mogul to find out more about him in order to strike a deal to get Major for his daughter. He then discovered that Harry Stafford was also the devoted captain of Newton Heath Football Club, which seemed to be his main passion in life, and they were struggling. The bazaars and fundraisers hadn't been making much of a dent to cover the increasing debts at the club, which had risen to £2,600 by January 1902, just over £400,000 in today's money. So a better situation than we're in now, I suppose. The Newton Heath president, William Healy, applied for a winding up order as he was personally owed nearly £250 by the club. Newton Heath were declared bankrupt and the gates of Bank Street were now padlocked. However, Harry Stafford never gave up and even went around collecting money for the team's train fare for the next match against Bristol City. Understanding Newton Heath's dire financial situation, John Davis saw an opportunity and called Harry to his house in Cheadle, just outside Manchester. Davis put it to Stafford bluntly as a hard-nosed businessman. "What matters most to you, your football club or your dog?" The answer that the Newton Heath skipper gave would change English, European and world footballing history forever. Harry thought about the ultimatum for a long time, after which he said, "I adore my dog, but I adore my team as well." "But well, what would you do, Mr. Davis?" John Henry Davis said, "I would take it over completely, furbish you with a brand new team, and you would still be retained as captain, and we'd make the ground decent, and everything would be made all right for you. Now if I do that, will you let me have the dog?" Harry replied, well, under those circumstances, he'd make it a bargain. The bargain was made at Moseley Hall, Cheadle, and on Elsie Davis's 12th birthday, Harry came back with a major. He would live with the Davis family until he passed age 17 years. John Henry Davis didn't invest alone, heading a group of 3 other businessmen, also investing at least £500 apiece, as well as taking on and clearing the club's debts. After deciding to change the club kit from white shorts and navy blue shorts, Davis convened a meeting of the club's fans, directors and other interested parties to determine a new name for the side. He felt a big city name was required. A man who would be influential in the history of the club in many ways, Louis Rocker, claims that after hearing other people's rejected suggestions of Manchester Celtic and Manchester Central, he suggested the name Manchester United, and the board agreed. That date, 26th of April 1902, Harry Stafford played his last game as Newton Heath captain, beating Manchester City in the Manchester Senior Cup final, his only winner's medal for either incarnations of the club. Once that match ended, he became the first captain of Manchester United Football Club. Davis made sure that apart from retaining his captaincy, Harry Stafford and secretary James West were put in charge of football affairs, making this club's saviour effectively club captain, manager and director. Harry was 32 when he played his first season for Manchester United, and so didn't have a long stint as skipper, but that didn't prevent him being the first United player ever to get sent off, in a 2-1 FA Cup winning tie against Liverpool. He really was a United man. Stafford played his 200th and final game for Newton Heath and Manchester United against Lincoln City in March 1903, after which he retired. However, in their administrative capacity, he and West didn't keep the books in good order and were deemed to have made illegal payments to players, to which they both pleaded guilty to. This led to them both having a 2.5-year suspension from the FA, and so West and Stafford had to resign from the board. Harry went back to doing what he did best and became the landlord of the Imperial Hotel in Manchester. After his suspension ended, United took him back as a scout, and he brought the likes of Harry Moga and Dick Duckworth to the club, who were to be integral in our first 2 league title wins, our maiden FA Cup and 2 Charity Shields. However, Harry went through some personal hardships at the time as well, as his wife passed away in 1907. Remarried with a number of skeletons in his closet, he wanted a new life abroad. As a thank you for all of his year's service and his crucial contribution to United's existence, he was awarded £50 from the club to assist with his emigration to Australia. However, this was actually used as a pseudo-final destination to cover his tracks even more. His true final port of call was actually to the eastern seaboard of the US. In 1917, now well into his late 40s, Stafford moved to Quebec in Canada. However, the Great Depression of the 1930s hit him hard, and now in his 60s he lost his job and struggled terribly. On the 24th of October 1940, just over a month before his 71st birthday, he died penniless at home. One of the most important people on our history, whose yes or no answer to John Henry Davis's question 38 years before could have meant life or death to our club, has his remains interred in an unmarked grave in Mount Royal Cemetery. I think the least the club could do is pay for a suitable headstone for this man, but that's just my opinion. After all, we wouldn't have a club without him. So that was the story of the most important skipper in United's history, who despite his clear on-field abilities will always be defined by his off-field activities and his personal sacrifice to keep the club going. So what do you make of Harry Stafford? Please write in the comments below and like, share and especially subscribe. As always, thank you for your support.